Aloha. Uh, Today I want to kind of add on what I said yesterday in regards to the alternative news, and it's not necessarily directly related to that whole um, scene, but the mostly just the foundations on which this stuff lies, and how far back this stuff goes, and how it's all interconnected into our own mindsets, and how we even raise our children, and how we interact with each other and build our own personalities and help our children uh, become who they are, set the foundations for their personalities and what they are to be and how they are to interact in this world and where their power comes from, and just kind of like where everything lies, where everything lies, and where those foundations come from. So there's in relation to the New Age movement, there's a lot of there's a lot of good things that are coming about in this movement, but it's just like how these so-called terrorist actions are being utilized. The actions that are carried out are not um, they're not without influence from people who profit from such actions. And when you understand that there is no connection with um, the blood that's being shed and the money that gets made, they're the people who make this money off of defense, war profiteers, and the whole idea of a war-driven society and a military-industrial complex and a prison-industrial complex. This stuff is not new. This stuff exists from going back into, and it goes into even our own religion. So I'm just kind of like setting the foundation to a little example that I've come to realize even in my own family is that I didn't grow up religious at all. Like my mom, she pretty much raised me with my stepfather, and um, there was no religion in the house really. It was just kind of like my father was raised with a Christian mother, and he kind of went his own way. And then my mother was the same way. She grew up in the Mexican side with a Catholic perspective, and she went the other way. They were both rebels. They both rebelled against the whole locking down of the situation that involved how we live our lives. So that's what they did, and in turn, they kind of taught me to do the same thing. But the point being is that we can look at that and we can celebrate that as, yeah, oh great, which is kind of like what the New Age movement is set on, broken foundations. They want to be building on top of foundations that are already broken, and don't want to look at the side effects of growing up in a civilization that is kind of already meant to control, and the side effects that come from growing up in a religious household, or even a religious society that is designed to not only control and keep people in a certain vibration, but to also implant ideas and perspectives, and ways that people will either respond in a situation or not respond. It's kind of like control measures. And just like the other day, one of the most obvious things is how and it's difficult to see a lot of these things because they're so like small and so like not even we can't really relate them to anything bigger because we call this stuff part of our personality and who we think we are, and we think we're gonna lose our identities, or we think we're gonna lose um, who we are because we're so convinced that our identity is who we are, but that's not the case. That's actually just the movie reel that's being manipulated to convince people of that. And one main example that is it was very slick that I saw the other day is that something was knocked over. Like I had my little oil for my hair, argan oil for my hair, and it was knocked over and it broke. It spilled and broke. A little bit spilled, and it also broke like a crystal, like I think it was an amethyst. Yeah, it was an amethyst. And so that bottle fell and fell on top of a crystal and broke it. And when I came back in the house, my the person who broke it was like, "Hey, your bottle fell over and and broke this crystal, and a little bit spilled, and that was the end of it. It was kind of just like, yeah." So I mean, it's not like a big deal at all, but it's an example of the separation that we have that is implanted from the guilt that goes all the way back into how we build our personalities for not taking responsibility for even our own actions. So even the design of that statement of this bottle as if it fell over on its own, and there's no responsibility there, and it's an example of the separation that gets out there for defense mechanisms. And this is really going into what I was thinking about in the shower earlier, was the layers, the deep layers of guilt that are implanted from like the early stages of religious guilt that goes out there. So much so that we can't even take responsibility for even the smallest of things. And how the example for that is that why I'm even making a video about this to make it seem like something to talk about, but it really is as deep as this goes, as far as this same mentality is going into the actions of even our own government. So our government goes around talking about, this happened, actions, terrorism happened, and we gotta do something about it. Or there's something like, what the fuck? How many acts, how many things are gonna happen before people start to realize that these things aren't just happenings? This shit just didn't happen. That bottle just didn't fall over. Somebody had to fucking knock that bottle over and break that crystal. Somebody had to create a situation in the whole psyche of the human design and the whole society and the whole makeup of how we interact with each other to that leads to these acts that shed blood. The shit doesn't. It just doesn't happen on its own. So like we see it as, and we're comfortable with it because we are filled with a life full of fucking distractions, with the television and coloring books, and we got a world full of distractions that once they get totally enveloped as our reality, video games, once they program us to separate ourselves, then we got to be comfortable with that. And then subconsciously, this is what I was talking about in the shower. Subconsciously, we feel guilty about this. So subconsciously, our parents feel guilty about raising us in a society that's fucking broken, and they really can't do anything about it because they already feel helpless. They feel that their job is done when the civil rights was, carried out, and they kind of like fall in a large majority of them kind of fall into the hopeless state of being, kind of like well, it's not ours anymore, it's up to the kids in the future and this whole thing. And that's not true, because everybody is involved in this situation. Everybody has something to add to this plan. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. If you weren't supposed to be here, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be engaged. You wouldn't be alive. The main thing here is the purpose that gets lost and covered with guilt that is set by the foundation of religious guilt that's out there. And this goes all the way back to it's like how deep this hopeless state of being is, and how that's actually the design that is being it's supposed to be that way according to the so-called powers that be, because they're comfortable with people just voting. Voting is just a simple, when they give you options like Donald Trump and Carson and Bush and all these other people, if you vote for that, if you still believe in those kind of people that are out there, if you still believe in that system, then you are casting your vote. You're casting a spell on yourself. And if kind of like the alchemical properties of Donald Trump and a Bush that are out there, and somebody says, okay, cast a spell on yourself, if you fall for that and you limit your reality based upon that kind of magic, then that's your choice. And that's how magic gets activated. And we activate it in the worlds of the subconscious that are like standing on the foundations of religious guilt that is triple layered from the old school religions that just kind of massacred and genocided entire cultures, that taken and destroyed entire countries. And that hopelessness goes back that far and even further, and that state of mind and state of being gets downloaded into our own personalities, and how we raise our children, and how we consider our involvement in the so-called power grid of this human design, and it gets kind of like stolen right under our noses, because what is being delivered to us is based upon not your maximum potential, but based upon a design that is got at least 3 or 4 layers that are behind the scenes, that are looking a certain way and tasting a certain way, but that shit smells just like it is. It's shit. And this shit that we've been building condos and coffee shops and dog parks on top of a shitty ass foundation, and it's in how we have our personalities and how we raise our children, and it goes a lot deeper than that, because we don't even have a connection with who we are, our culture and everything. And in that kind of stagnant state of being, a lot of things can happen, and if we don't think outside of these boxes, we won't be able to see our true potential, and we won't be able to kind of understand this bloodshed and what's going on, and how our own involvement is a part of it. So I'll leave it there, and I'm pretty sure I hit on the guilt, and the guilt that goes all the way through our personalities, and not having any connection with our ancestors and our culture, and how we calibrate our reality, how we observe our realities, and even speak to each other. It's all intertwined. So I'll leave it there. Until next time, peace, love, and harmony.